Today we're making the legendary Cornish Pasty. So let's do it. To make our Cornish Pasty, we're going to start with the dough. So take a large mixing bowl, and the first thing we need is some plain flour. 500 grams of flour. So chuck the flour into the bowl, and we're going to want our fats. We're going to be using lard and butter. 125 grams of lard. And the rule of thumb, you want to use half the amount of fat as you have flour. 125 grams of unsalted butter. So 500 grams of flour, we want 250 grams of fats. 2 parts flour to 1 part fat. 500 flour, 250 fats. Get in there with your hands and give it a good mixing up. The first step, you want to kind of pinch the flour and the butter and the lard between your fingers. It will start to go grainy, almost kind of sandy. So keep working it through. This will mix everything together. I'm gonna smush and break it up until the point that it's almost like breadcrumbs. That's the first stage. Almost sieve it through your fingers to catch any bigger lumps. That is what we're looking for. Almost like breadcrumbs. So crumble it between your fingers, and then once it's almost sandy, you want to go in there with a little splash of water. Cold, about 150 milliliters. Not too much, just a dash to bring everything together, and then get back in there with your hands and start to massage everything together until we have a nice rough dough. Now we're going to start to knead it together. Very messy, that's what we're looking for. And then keep working it. I almost forgot, very important to season. So add a good pinch of salt. At this point, we can lose the bowl. So pop that to one side. You want to liberally flour the board and then start to knead the dough. Don't over knead it. We just want to start to get a bit of elasticity to the dough. We want the dough to be quite rough, so you want to knead it for anywhere between 3 and 5 minutes, give or take. Again, almost like a rough short crust. There we go. At this point, this is basically what we're looking for. And then once you have your dough, you want to wrap this up in cling film. So there we have it. That goes in the fridge for at least 1 hour, preferably about 2 or 3. So pop it in the fridge, and then we can crack on with the rest of the ingredients. So now for the filling, we're going to want a swede. And the first step, you want to cut away that hard base of the swede. Lay it flat side down, and then you want to peel off all of that skin. This may be the worst peeler of all time, but you work with what you got. So peel away, you want to remove any little bit of skin or blemish. And then once your swede is peeled, you want to take a really sharp knife, and we're going to start by cutting it into strips that are roughly 1/3 of an inch thick, give or take. We want the veg inside the pasty to be roughly the size of your thumbnail. So there we go. We just want to cut them up into these battens, the size of a decent sized chip. Can be a tiny bit bigger, tiny bit smaller. We want some texture, but we want the veg to be fairly small so it cooks through properly. So once you have these battens of swede, you want to cut down through them so we have these nice little pieces of swede. Once you've chopped it up, you want to pop that lot into a bowl. There we have it. Nice small little cubes, but not too tiny. And pop it to one side. Next, potato. So same again, peel the skin off the potato. And we want to cut the potato about the same size as we did our swede. Cut down through it into these strips again, and then chop it up into the same size pieces as your swede. Little centimetre pieces. And once your potato is done, that also goes into the mixing bowl, so chuck it in. So, onion. And the last of the vegetables, we're going to be using an onion. So take the onion, chop it in half and remove the skin, and we're going to be chopping this up the same size as the rest of the veg, of course. And once you're done, that goes straight into the mixing bowl. There we have it, onion, potato and swede. Mix it up, and then an important step, you want to salt the vegetables. Don't add pepper at this point, and don't add the meat yet. We don't want the meat to bleed out, and so we salt the veg. It will both season and it will also draw out some of that moisture. We want a little bit of moisture in the pasty to make almost a gravy, but not much. So add a good pinch of salt to the veg. Mix it up. This is a great trick. You'll see how much moisture comes out of the veg at the end. Stick this to one side, let the salt do its thing for about 20 minutes to half an hour. And next, the star of the show. This is a skirt steak. Lots of beautiful fat, loads of great marbling throughout the steak. The best beef for a Cornish pasty. And so take your beef, and the first step, you want to cut it into nice thin strips. We're talking 1/3 or 1/2 centimetre thick, nice and thin. We want these nice strips, just to begin with. Look at that lovely marbling. And then, once you've worked your way through the beef and you have these nice little strips, take your strips. You want to then cut those into halves or thirds. And we want to cut the steak into these nice little pieces. Not too big, not too small, but they will cook nice and quickly and evenly. So work your way through it, keeping it as even as you can, but you don't have to stress out too much. Look at all of that beautiful marbling. And also this way, you can mix everything together and you get a nice even distribution of meat and veg throughout the pasty, and you don't want great big chunks of beef. Pop that aside with the veg, and we're gonna mix the two together just at the point that we pop the filling into the pasties. And so, once you've prepped your beef, you want to pop that into another mixing bowl. We want a sieve, just pop that in that bowl, and then take your vegetables, pop the veg into the sieve, just so that any excess moisture can drip away. In it goes, give it a little mix up, and then pop the vegetables into the bowl with the beef, and repeat until we've mixed all of the vegetables and the beef together. And then from there, give it a little mixing up with your hands. So there we have it, a beautiful 50-50 mix of meat and vegetables. The vegetables have released loads of water. Don't know if you can see that, but there's loads of water in the bottom there. None of that water is gonna end up in our pasty. This I'll use for some other dish. You want to go in with a really nice generous amount of freshly ground black pepper. Be really nice and generous. We want this to have a nice peppered steak kind of vibe. So we are gonna add a tiny last touch of seasoning to this, because a lot of that salt would have come off into the water with the vegetables. But what we are gonna do at this point is add some flour. So about a tablespoon for the amount we've got here. Mix that up, and there we have it, our perfect Cornish pasty mix, ready to go. Next, we're gonna roll out the dough, put it together in the oven, and then we're gonna tuck in. So we wanna start by making a quick egg wash. So take a bowl, crack a good quality free range egg into the bowl, and give it a little whisking up. Also at this point, you want to preheat the oven to 180 degrees. And then take your dough. That has really firmed up nicely. Flour the board. Flour your rolling pin. Let's roll. And you want to roll that out fairly thin until we have a nice big sheet, a little bigger than a plate. You'll see why shortly. First step, we're just looking to get it to the shape we want, and then we can make any adjustments to the thickness. So just roll it out, and we're going to be using this bowl. You can use a plate. Pop it on top. Lay that on the dough, and then cut around it. Remove the excess. And now we want this to be a little bit thinner and a little bit wider. So keeping it as a circle, a few strokes that way, flip, repeat. And we want this to be about as thick as the pastry that you buy in a shop. So I mean, I don't know, we're talking a few millimeters, I guess. And then from there, you can roll it out any more to get the thickness that you're looking for. We don't want the pasty dough to be too thick, but we don't want it too thin either. And then continue and roll out as many doughs as you need. So we have a few circular sheets of the dough. So what we're gonna need is a baking tray and some parchment paper or greaseproof paper. There we have it, not too thick, not too thin. And then to 1/2, you want to pop on a nice heap of the pasty filling. You can be pretty generous. You can make little adjustments when you fold the pasty, but get in there, pile it on. Leave a border around this side. Add the filling to all the doughs that you've got ready. Your last tiny touch of seasoning. And then a great little trick that I learned from a pasty shop here in Cornwall. You want to add a few little flecks of butter. So just cut away some tiny little pieces of butter and pop those onto the pasty. And then brush around the dough with the egg wash. And then you very simply want to fold it over in half. Over you go. So the edges meet. Kind of fold it in like this. Push all the ingredients into the middle, keep this border fairly even, kind of massage it out a little bit so you almost seal in the meat and the veg while leaving a nice border around the edge. And then we want to crimp the pasty. A little bit tricky, but essentially press down with your finger on one side, fold over the other, and remember, this is a Cornish pasty. This doesn't have to be perfect. As long as it holds everything in and leaves you with a nice crust, that's all we want. It can be nice and rustic. Work your way along. I've never been great at this. As you can see, it's not the best crimp in the world. You can adjust it a little bit. You can cut a few air holes. I do not. Reason being is all the steam inside the pasty as it cooks will help to form a beautiful gravy with the juices from the meat, any moisture from the vegetables, and that flour and butter. And once you're done and you've crimped all of your pasties, two little beauties, be gentle. One last really good brushing with the egg wash, and then these are ready for the oven. And oh yes, there we go. So pop your pasties in the oven and you want to bake them off for roughly 45 minutes, basically until the pastry is beautiful and golden brown. Oh yes, they are done. Get those out of the oven. So here we go. And there we have the most incredible and delicious Cornish pasties. Here goes. Wow, meaty, great texture, beautiful flaky pastry. Oh yeah, that's good. Oh, the pepper makes it. That is unbelievable. A winter warmer, you need to give this one a try.